This is Caribbean News Desk. I'm Dennis Chabral. In this edition, the Union of South American Nations chief says that prorogation of Guyana's parliament is not a problem, even as President Donald Ramotar prepares to announce an election date. Montserrat Soufriere's Hills volcano is not yet asleep. Domestic violence is a scourge in the British Virgin Islands. Dominica's National Security Minister wants life sentences for sex offenders. Barbados is preparing to legally guarantee incentives for cultural industries. These and other stories coming up.
We are one Caribbean, one people, one nation. Facing the same destiny, so separated we are. As one, let's come together. One market economy. Caribbean is how it should be. Let's support CARICOM for Caribbean unity. It takes you, it takes me for Caribbean unity.
As Guyana's President Donald Ramotar prepares to call general elections, the Secretary General of the Union of South American Nations, or UNICER, Ernesto Samper, says he sees no problem with the suspension of Guyana's parliament. That's in contrast to Britain saying that a continued suspension of parliament with no valid reason violates the Commonwealth Charter. Samper told reporters in Suriname before arriving in Guyana that UNICER will be willing to mediate only if both government and the opposition seek the assistance of the South American organization. In Guyana, after meeting with President Donald Ramotar, the UNICER Secretary General said that a Guyanese leader has requested electoral observers.
Yes, we are aware of that situation. We have talked of that with the President. I have the confidence that the President will address the general election very soon. Even he has asked officially to UNASUR to prepare a commission of observers, electoral observers, that we generally prepare for the elections in the region to support the elections that he is preparing to address in very soon, as he told me.
High-level political sources said that the president is expected to dissolve parliament and announce that Guyanese would go to the polls in early May. President Ramotar's calls for dialogue and an agreement on the post-suspension parliamentary agenda have been all rebuffed by the opposition parties. They have said that it would only go into talks if the suspension is lifted. The Guyanese leader suspended a parliament on November 10 to stave off the passage of a no-confidence motion in his administration. If that had happened, elections would have had to be held in January, but the Guyana Elections Commission would not have been entirely ready. The National Assembly has not held a sitting since July 10, and the House went into its 2-month recess on August 10. United States Senator Richard Durbin says that a 3-day trip to Cuba last weekend by a delegation of 6 Democratic lawmakers from his country was very productive. In a communique, Durbin said that re-establishing travel and trade relations will mean real benefits for the United States, especially for farmers, small businesses, and working families. Durbin said that the policy changes announced by President Barack Obama go beyond trade and travel. It's about opening Cuba to new ideas, he says, new values, and improved human rights that their 50-year-old policy of exclusion could not achieve. However, he warned that the changes won't happen immediately and that they'll have to be realistic, above all, about the total lifting of the embargo on Cuba by means of legislation in a Congress where a single senator can scuttle it. The presence of the lawmakers preceded the arrival in Havana this week of the Assistant Secretary of State for Western Hemisphere Affairs, Roberta Jacobson, to negotiate the reopening of embassies in both countries. The delegation did not meet with Cuban President Raul Castro, but did speak for several hours with Foreign Minister Bruno Rodriguez and with officials of the Culture Ministry. Montserrat's Soufriere Hills volcano has not gone back to sleep, although it has been visibly quiet on the surface for the past 5 years. Director of the Montserrat Volcano Observatory, Rod Stewart, says that the pause in activity does not mean that the volcano has gone back to sleep. Mr. Stewart says that monitoring shows that there is a great likelihood that visible activity can restart at any time.
The indications are there from our monitoring that there is still something trying to push its way out, and therefore there is still the possibility of activity restarting. So this is why we are not in a situation yet to say the volcano has gone back to sleep. We have to be ready for it to restart. We hope it doesn't, but there is still a real possibility that it might.
The director of the Montserrat Volcano Observatory, Rod Stewart, speaking on Radio Montserrat's ZGB Radio. He says that low-frequency earthquakes, gas levels, and ground information must all be below certain limits for at least 1 year before experts can conclude that a volcano is dormant. The Soufriere volcano rumbled back to life in 1995, and 2 years later, in August 1997, a large eruption killed 19 people. Since then, more than half of the 34-square-mile island has been declared uninhabitable, and more than half of the island's 11,000 persons have gone to neighboring Caribbean islands, Britain, and the United States. The Chief Secretary of the Tobago House of Assembly, Orville London, has given the Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago a deadline to meet with him. January 31 is the deadline that was given to discuss the island's thrust for self-governance. He was speaking at a forum for the political parties in Tobago. London said that when Kamila Prasad-Bessessa met with them last December, she promised a follow-up meeting at the end of January. However, leader of the Tobago Platform for Truth, Hochoy Charles, as reported by Power 102 FM, warned Tobagonians that they should not wait on Trinidad to start pushing for self-governance. He claimed that based on events unfolding in Trinidad, Tobago would be better served trying to move quickly to handle its own affairs.
If it hits Trinidad, whether it's a tsunami, earthquake, or hurricane, or manmade, and that disaster did not touch Tobago at all, you are dead. Let me take my time. You're dead. You're worse off than those in Trinidad. Because they're dead, and what you do with the dead, cremate them or bury them. But you will be the living dead walking in Tobago.
In the British Virgin Islands, domestic violence is becoming a major problem, as we hear in this report from Angela Burns.
Domestic violence is becoming quite an expensive scourge to deal with in the British Virgin Islands as more and more men, women and children cry out for help. The Family Support Network, FSN, is a non-profit organization at the forefront of providing counseling, food, clothing and shelter for victims. But in its 2014 annual report, President Judith Charles is suggesting that the FSN is now at the crossroads where there are more demands than resources. Charles said the Family Support Network, which depends on a subvention from government and donations, will need at least $150,000 to effectively provide the service it does this year. She said over the years, more and more persons are coming to the Family Support Network for assistance, and the organization urgently needs funds to cover expenses such as shelter, food, clothing, salaries, social security, payroll taxes, health insurance, and operational expenses. From January to December 2013, 59 women, 12 men, and 29 children turned to FSN for assistance, while in 2014, those figures jumped to 145 females and 25 males. 29 children also received assistance in 2014. The FSN director said they provided a food bank and all of the other services to 282 families in 2014, and that cost over $101,000. She said if they base their projections for 2015 on just the number of new clients in 2014 alone, they would need at least $150,000 to run the office and provide services to clients. For Caribbean News Desk, I am Angela Burns in Tortola, British Virgin Islands.
Dominica's Justice and Immigration and National Security Minister Rayburn Blackmore is expressing concern about the spate of sexual offences now before the court, and says government will put systems in place to better equip prosecutors as they deal with the problem of sexual offences on the island. Speaking on state-owned DBS Radio's Talking Point, the minister said that those who are involved in committing the act of unlawful carnal knowledge should be given life sentences.
Persons who commit those appalling offenses get the right sentences. especially as it relates to unlawful carnal knowledge. And based on what I've seen, in most cases, you have situations whereby the persons who are being affected range from the age of 4 to 14. Be it a young child, mind, or girl, or boy. In my estimation, in my view, any person who gets himself or herself involved in the commission of unlawful carnal knowledge should be put away for life.
Sexual offences dominated the criminal session of the court, which got underway in Dominica earlier this month. 20 ministers and the 12 secretaries of state in Haiti have delivered their oath of office at the National Palace in the capital, Port-au-Prince. The BBC reports that President Michel Martelly praised the pluralism at the centre of the new government and said it was down to the goodwill of the opposition. He had been ruling by decree since last Tuesday, when Parliament dissolved. But opposition leaders have accused the president of failing to deliver in forming a consensus government. Haiti's new government is headed up by Prime Minister Evans Paul, a former mayor of Port-au-Prince and an unsuccessful contender in the 2006 presidential elections, when he received just 2.5% of the vote. Among the newly sworn-in ministers are 6 members of the previous cabinet, including the ministers for Foreign Affairs, Health and Defence. The new lineup also includes allies of the president appointed to key positions such as Planning Minister Yves Germain Joseph and the Secretary of State for Public Security Carol Alexandre. President Martelly has been in power since 2011 and has pledged not to change the constitution to seek a second term. His opponents accuse him of using the current crisis to promote his own candidate to succeed him in elections later this year. Haiti remains heavily dependent on U.S. financial aid. It is the poorest nation in the Western Hemisphere and is still recovering from a devastating earthquake in January 2010, in which large parts of the capital were destroyed. Barbados is preparing to enact the Cultural Industries Development Act on February 1 in order to give more incentives to the island's creative industries. The Minister of Culture, Sports and Youth, Stephen Lashley, said that one of the key components of the incentives is to make provisions for the private sector to be able to invest in the cultural industry sector and to do so in a way to allow for investments to be given the necessary tax write-off treatment. Lashley said that with the new act, creative practitioners will benefit from funding, duty-free concessions, and tax benefits. Under the new law, the government will establish the Cultural Industries Development Authority to provide assistance to artists and producers in the island. He also said that the authority should be in place before the start of the Crop Over Festival with its own human and physical resources.
We are 15 states with a common goal, a unified purpose to face the world, enriching lives, empowering people, creating a strong economic region. No matter where you're from, no hassle, just freedom. When the business school of pleasure, we will benefit together. The CARICOM single market, good for you and me. The CARICOM single market, good for you and me. The CARICOM single market, good for you and me. Oh yeah.
You've been listening to Caribbean News Desk. Thank you for joining us. Don't forget to visit our website at caribnewsdesk.com or our Facebook page at www.facebook.com/caribnewsdesk. You could also follow us on Twitter at twitter.com/demways. Again, thank you for being with us. I'm Dennis Shibro.